How's it going, guys? My name is Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. Today I want to talk about the newest game from Baroque Decay, Yuppie Psycho. It's an adventure game taking place in a corporate setting, dealing with the terrifying prospect of starting a new, unfamiliar job, blended together with the straight-up horror of a John Carpenter movie. While it is a horror game, it doesn't solely rely on jump scares. In fact, there's very few of those sorts of moments in this game. It's very narrative driven with lots of weird body horror, disturbing imagery, complex characters, and unexpected twists and turns. The blending of its cartoony pixel art with its much more serious story content is done quite flawlessly in my mind. I really can't recommend the game enough. I really enjoyed it. Not for the weak of heart, but if you really don't like amnesia style jump scare horrible stuff, you might enjoy this tense setting, character-based thriller more so than that. So please, even if you don't think you like horror games, I would recommend giving this one a chance. That being said, this video is going to be very spoiler heavy. So if you're at all interested in playing the game for yourself or seeing more about it, I would recommend picking it up and playing through it before you watch this video, or at the very least you could watch my own playthrough here on the channel. You can click this little icon here up in the corner. It's a 10-episode playthrough spanning about 9 hours. I know that seems quite long, but the game never feels repetitive, and I did my best to edit out anything that would be. So I think it's a nice tight 9 hours, as contradictory as that might sound. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that you've seen or played through the game yourself, because we're going to get deep into spoilers, secrets, Easter eggs, all that good stuff. A huge shout out to everyone who worked alongside me in the comments section while I played through the game myself. Through thorough exploration, guided by plenty of hints and suggestions within the comments, we were able to discover quite a few of the secrets within this game, even just on a first playthrough. But I've tried to expand on that by doing more research after the fact. Here's a quick refresher on some basic plot points. Not all of them, but enough to hopefully remind you if it's been a minute since you've played or seen the game for yourself. Brian is hired at Cintracorp, a supposed dream job above his position as a low-class citizen. Instead of filing paperwork, he quickly learns he was hired to kill a legendary witch that has haunted the company for many years. Through his exploration and meeting different employees, we discover many secrets, such as the many hunters who have come before and failed, what a mean jerk Hugo is, and the main secret being the true origin of the supposed witch. Demori was a fox spirit treated as a daughter of the Cintra family, right up until they eventually kept her locked away as a good luck charm, while their blood daughter, Ray, was allowed to laugh and play as she pleased. Demori is originally powered by love and friendship, but is eventually influenced by a snake to use her magic for evil, thus creating the witch. There was a body swapping to give Demori a chance to play outside, but through fear and superstition, Ray, in Demori's body, is burned at the stake by her family. They are cursed to misfortune, and a backup of Ray is preserved in the company mascot, the android Cintra. The legend of the evil witch grows as the malevolent entity that controlled Demori feeds on the employees of Cintracorp. That's a pretty half-assed summary, but it's a long, complex game. Again, this video is targeted at people who are already familiar. First, we could talk a little bit about the name, Yuppie Psycho. I don't think Baroque Decay has ever said very specifically how they landed on that name, but it's pretty apparent to see where their influences came from here. Yuppie is a term that came around in the late 80s, used to describe young professionals, up-and-coming business class wheelers and dealers. Yuppie culture is all about these young business entrepreneurs, but it's much more than that. It really is its own lifestyle. It's all about affluence, opulence, showing off everything that you have. Having money doesn't mean anything if you can't flaunt it. That power and status means much more to you than the material things themselves, but they themselves are a great way to prove that you have power and status.
It's what you have, not who you are. No plain ice cream. I want a Dove bar. I'm a player.
A movie that does a great job representing this as well as lampooning it is actually American Psycho, which itself is actually based on a book, but people are more familiar with the movie, so let's go with that. The name Yuppie Psycho kind of simultaneously references the culture that's happening in American Psycho as well as playing on its name. The characters who work at Cintracorp within Yuppie Psycho are a bunch of yuppies. This company is degraded to the point that jobs don't even matter. It's all about status and power. Even outside of the company, citizens are ranked and classed. Brian Pasternak, our main character, starts as Class G before joining Sintracorp. Chapman, who's one of the first characters that we actually meet when we arrive for our job, is the complete embodiment of this yuppie culture. If you never go and watch American Psycho and are curious what exemplifies those characteristics, look no further than Chapman as a character. Now, obviously, there's the twofold of Psycho based on the fact that the shit that goes on at Sintracorp is quite psychotic. The structure of this business, how people operate within it, the fact that no one seems disturbed by what they see on a daily basis, and the fact that there's like magic and mystical things going on is pretty psycho. So along with being an incredibly cool, catchy title, Yuppie Psycho is very informative of the game that you're in for. Hey, if you're into games that have horror themes and pixel art, then maybe you'd like to give the roguelike top-down shooter Dead Estate a try. It's a game Two Left Thumbs is publishing. It's due out October of this year. We're doing our absolute best to get it polished in time for that. Hopefully we can pin down a release date sometime soon. I think that game is going to be something really special with endless replayability. I'll have a link down below. Please wishlist that, help us build some momentum and some interest, and show Steam you're excited about this game. Let's get back to Yuppie Psycho. There's a few interesting early teases that actually take place in the opening menu here. Nothing very spoilery, but things that looking back on it, you realize were references rather than just random imagery. The weird green gridded background is the Sintranet. The marble head is something that was found in the Sintranet for who knows what reason. There are bloody contracts all over the place. We see a VHS tape off to the side, a parsnip, which Brian eventually earns as a nickname, and the devil mask floating off to the right. It's interesting to look back and see that things that were seemingly random actually do tie into the larger game. Early on in the game, you'll learn that you can save your file by photocopying yourself on Sintracorp's photocopiers using witch paper. While we're talking about the photocopiers and saves, something that I missed myself is that this will slowly change over time the more you save. It might also have to do with the point in the game that you are, but usually saving is such an innocuous thing that I wouldn't think to look for anything special there. The game really does make a point of the fact that the more you're saving, the more you're corrupting your own soul. And slowly you'll start to discover more disturbing imagery. Brian will be injured, someone will be forcing his face into the photocopier. A shadowy figure will be looming behind. It's a very interesting narrative device, and I imagine there's a lot more to be read into that. The Hexenhammer that we're sent to retrieve. This is a text on all things witches, how to find them and how to destroy them. We eventually learn that it was published in 1487 by Kramer and Sprenger. This is actually based on a real ancient text, the Malleus Maleficarum, from Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger. Malleus Maleficarum translates to Hammer of the Witches, and it's considered a treatise on witches for finding them and hunting them. It's a massive text. I wouldn't recommend reading it for yourself, but if you're curious about the history of witches, it's a neat thing to look at, and I like that they pulled on real-world history to build the lore of this game. If you go to the bathroom, another use for this witch paper is actually in the washroom, which totally confused me that it was labeled WC. In a lot of places overseas, it's quite common to refer to a washroom or bathroom as a water closet. Hence the WC, something that other North American players or viewers might not have understood, same as myself. Anyways, once you're inside the washroom itself, water closet, whatever we're gonna call it, you can use a witch paper on the mirror. Normally you can use the mirror and just look at you, yourself, Brian Pasternak. If you instead choose to use the witch paper on the mirror, you'll see yourself dressed up in this weird devil costume. You have a red mask, one red eye, and what seems to be a massive blood stain on your shirt. It's also noted that the S for Sintracorp on the witch paper in the mirror appears to be a 2. Now bear with me for a minute because I'm about to jump all over the game here. The witch's lair is actually on the second floor behind door number 2. Another character in this devil costume actually reappears during Hugo's birthday party. It's not someone you can interact with. They just kind of pass by on the edge of the screen while you're locked into a cutscene conversation. It's very strange that you get to see someone else in this costume. After all of the craziness that happens at that party, you will find this character dead and you can take the costume for yourself. Now you physically actually have this costume in your possession, begging the question how you were seeing yourself in it in the mirror earlier. We also see the game refer to the costume as the Yuppie Devil. When you go up to the top floor and want to access the art gallery where Spader is, it asks you to introduce yourself as a man of wealth and taste. This is nearly a direct quote from the first 2 lines of Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. A cool little Easter egg and tie-in on its own to a very popular song. Also interesting that it's the second line, which, going back to the 2, because I moved on from that too quickly, may be referring to the 2 rules that the Sintra family was given in relation to Demori. keep her safe within a magic seal, and make her happy. There's a lot of positive connotations to go around the number 2. People often associate it with relationships, this idea of partnership and balance, harmony and cooperation. It's largely seen as a number of love. But I actually stumbled across an AMA that Baroque Decay did when the Count Lucanor was coming out on the Nintendo Switch. Budsy on Reddit threw out kind of a silly random question of what's your favorite number? The developers responded with, thanks, you may think that question is a joke, but I actually have weird theories about numbers and I'm using them for our new game Yuppie Psycho. They say that their favorite number would probably be 3, maybe 9, but never 2. 2 is pure evil. So likely they're leaning a little bit more on the negative connotations of the number 2. Duality, opposition, separation, antagonism. Some people view 2 as the personification of the devil's evil. That 1 by itself is the unit, pure and unblemished. 2 is a weak number, ugly, sterile, and unhappy, building off of 1. With nothing left good to add, it contributes only evil to the equation. I would say this line of thinking is probably much more close to what Baroque Decay had in mind with the Witch Paper 2 in this game. The only other idea I have for the 2 is that it's referring to the 2 girls, Demori and Ray. If anyone else has any good theories and evidence to back that up, I would love to hear it. There's a lot of interesting things going on with the timeline in this game. There's lots of small little instances that place dates. While exploring thoroughly through the game, I'm not sure if I found every single one, but I'm fairly certain I have at least the majority of them. We could start with the dates of the births of both parents. João Sintra, 1918 to 1972. Zhu Ying, 1924 to 1982. We know that Sintra Corp was originally founded in 1951. The family was relatively happy, but were struggling with their inability to have children. At some point they went abroad and acquired Demori. Ray Sintra is born in 1961 and Sintra Corp is on the rise. There's a financial article from 1961. International banks recommend buying shares of the Sintranet Group in the face of forecasts of higher stock market growth. Support the miracle of a small family business that is now at the top of the economy. A statement from Jay Sintra, founder and president of the company. I do not believe in luck, I'm not superstitious, the key is knowing how to take advantage of opportunities. In 1971 we get the first mentions of Project Cornucopia. This is where they're seemingly making copies of Ray, who at the time was only a 10-year-old girl. It's an internal report, Project Cornucopia, April 14, 1971. Backup copy updated. Observations, the subject does not seem to suffer or remember anything from the procedure. Future experiments could study whether we could modify one of these copies and integrate one into part of our network. I guess the family felt like things had been going well, they were investing further into the company, and they were starting to ignore Demori. They were betraying the promise of keeping her happy. Shortly after that, Sintra Corp's shares start to fluctuate. It's a financial article from May 1971 that someone has cut out. The swift and unexpected fluctuation of the shares of Sintra Corp, one of the most reliable companies of the last decade, has called into question the world's major stock exchanges. Experts predict that if the situation continues until the end of the year, the international community could enter into an unprecedented recession. We begin to see further evidence that Demori is definitely unhappy. This would have been leading right up to when Demori took over Ray's body. It's a handwritten letter from May 5th, 1971. I thought being a nanny would be more comfortable than working in the offices, especially if I'm taking care of a dumb girl. But I'm gonna have to give up for the sake of my mental health. There's another page. I understand the stress that the family is going through, and that it's a bad time to leave my position, but that witch has not stopped crying in the last 3 days. Her crying gives me goosebumps. Shortly after, in 1972, is the death of Ray and João. Obviously, this is actually the time they would have burnt up Demori, but they were unable to recover Ray. It's unclear how João died, but there's a chance there was a lot of grief and guilt associated there, having burned their other daughter. It's not overly surprising that he was removed from the picture. There's a clipping from a Society magazine. Was the recent funeral of the heiress of the Sintra fortune part of a cover-up? Unofficial sources seem to believe so, as they've been unable to access an autopsy report so far. In 1973, Zhu Ying starts to push forward with Project Cornucopia, making the first S1 robot, trying desperately to get her daughter back. It's a copy of a company magazine from 1973. Sintra Corp returns with their new development plan in robotics and computing. In 1982, we have the death of Zhu Ying, and in 1983, there's the unexpected failure of the S2. The 6th floor and R&D is closed, and we get more significance for S2. Here is a report taken from December 1983 magazine. The unexpected failure of the S2 models has been compounded by the temporary closure of the 6th floor R&D department. After the death of President Zhu Ying, it has not yet been announced who will make the decisions on the challenges ahead. Beyond that, there's not many more important dates to place. In 1984, the Intranet is corrupt and everyone's moved to new PCs. In 1989, Corvo is working towards killing the witch, but he dies soon after, around 1989 or 90, bringing us to the game's present, which is sometime in 1990. You can repeatedly revisit Sintra in the Intranet. Ensuring that you do so after major story beats will reveal more of this world. If you visit at all the appropriate times, which I don't know the precise moments they have to be, the world will be expanded enough to include Sintra's pool. Here we find her swimming laps around the pool, seemingly apathetic and giving up on pursuing the witch. We also start to see a little glitchiness around the room. She's worried that perhaps she has become corrupt. We also get a little bit of foreshadowing from Brian that he is afraid of water. When I was little, I almost drowned, and since that time I prefer to stay as far away from the water as possible. Sintra also refers to going to the beach with her parents. Just another little kernel of lore here, hinting that maybe more than just Ray's physical appearance was used as the model for Sintra. I bring this up now because there's a little martini glass on the table next to Sintra. She won't let you take it, claiming it's her cocktail. But if you go to the southern end of the pool in kind of the shady, dark area, you can find another one of these, and when you pick it up, it is the Devil's Blood. Towards the end of the game in the art gallery, we also find another red cocktail, around where we sit down and talk to Spader. This one doesn't have any sort of description or name, but when you drink it, your strength is recovered and you go back to full health. The devil, blood, devil's blood, all of these are recurring motifs throughout the game. Even at the north portion of the pool, there's a bandaged up, bleeding figure that looks like what we come to associate with the witch and her children. The other statue is a man with horns. He looks like a demon. Sintra is sitting here talking about her parents in a room with a man and woman statue that look like the witch and the devil. Supposedly witches are made by drinking the devil's blood. Going even further with this, when we're dressed up as the Yuppie Devil within the art gallery, we walk by the head of the original Sintra. She sees us and refers to us as Daddy. Spader's a little bit wigged out. He's never heard this thing talk before. The pamphlet outside of this art gallery refers to it as an exhibition in the honor of Devil's Blood. If we return to the archived area within the Intranet, there's the empty painting at the end of the room with the plaque that reads The Devil's Blood. We can then splash the blood on this, granting us access to a new area. It has a few narrow halls in which we can find a lone book on the ground. It says it's Hexenhammer. What's it doing lying here? Exploring deeper into the room, we'll find a bunch of glitching out books, folders, and what have you all over the room. What's all this? They all say Hexenhammer. All of them are Hexenhammers. Why are there so many copies of the book here? Everything is full of digital copies of Hexenhammer. They're of no use to me. Seemingly, either Sintra is glitching out and copying this thing endlessly, or many of the previous hunters have made it further than we thought. Maybe many of them have found the Hexenhammer and had it copied before, only to die later on, have the quest abandoned, and the progress they made lost. The fact that Devil Brian in the mirror has one red eye seems to be a bit of a recurring motif. Demore herself has red eyes. The character who sold Demore has red eyes. We also have to collect the red eye stones to access the mausoleum in which Ray is buried. And when we later learn that Ray and Demore switched bodies, very subtly, through a little bit of color manipulation during this cutscene, it appears that the picture overall is just turning more red, just kind of as the tone of the scene is changing. But very cleverly, you'll notice that Ray's eyes switch from green to red, signifying that this is around the time Demore would have taken over. Obviously, the big giant snake has red eyes as well. This idea of Brian having one red eye and being called Daddy when he's dressed up as the devil. There are so many unanswered questions there. What does this devil represent? Why does it have blood on its shirt? Who is the random character that was killed, and why were they dressed as the devil? Why are we seeing ourselves that way in the mirror without even having the costume? What does Mappy know or see that we don't? When you go and talk to them after the party, they say that they're recording a new film, Mr. Devil. The whiteboard on the wall has changed a few times, going from Eat to Happy Birthday to Brian during all the chaos, and now Devil afterwards. After your initial conversation with Mappy, if you talk to them again, even without the costume on, Mappy tags on this little "said the devil" after what you say, adding this narrative quality that you are the devil. This is just more of that perception that Brian is the devil, or somehow connected to the devil, or somehow connected to this family. Let the theories run wild. Like I said, there are the 10 different videos here. Something to be mindful of is that you can botch this achievement. There are certain things that you won't be able to access later in the game, and you have to be sure to have watched every video in the video room before ending the game. As I lay out the locations of the 10 tapes, I'll be sure to highlight ones that you're at risk of missing. So, starting with the first tape on the 7th floor. In the room filled with the little eyeball landmines, in the lower right hand corner there's a knocked over TV stand with VHS tapes scattered all over. Interacting with this will get you Chrysalis. I would recommend doing it at the beginning of this puzzle, because if you wait till the end, Hugo comes in and turns out the lights, and you have to do it in the dark like I did. Makes things a wee bit more difficult. On floor 5, where your main office is, in the second stall from the left of the water closet, there's a man there you can talk to and interact with. Later on in the game he will no longer be there, and when you search the toilet you will find from the drain. On the 8th floor, where the garden is, in the woods behind the man just to the left of the elevator, if you go back, there is a box there with "Follow a cat through the woods." This is one of the ones you can't access in the late game. Later on we can only access the garden through the vent, and even then we can only go through the vent if we unscrewed it. So make sure you go grab this one as soon as you're in this area. On floor 4, the Hive, next to the area where the Union rep is standing with all the yellow stuff painted all over the walls. After learning how to crawl, we can go under this divider, and one of the 2 lockers will have blood trail. Still on floor 4, but after getting the ability to breathe in the toxic fumes, right before fighting the dot matrix boss, there's another series of dividers you can crawl under with a pair of cabinets. Inside one of those is the weary human face. Later on floor 8 with the garden, but after we have the ability to access the actual graveyard area, behind a tombstone to the right of the Sintra family mausoleum, there's another container that contains apparition. There's some confusion here, it's apparition, appearance, it's kind of interchanged within the game, I think that's a slight error. Again, because you can only access parts of the garden later in the game, you need to make sure you get this one as soon as it's available to you. The remaining 4 are only available in the late game after Hugo's party. Back on the 5th floor in your main area, over by Office C, there's a dead guy in a loose briefcase which contains "Fired." On the 9th floor, when going through the art exhibit, if you very specifically look at all the paintings except the Red Lady, that being the one that's actually needed to complete the puzzle, but by looking at the other photos, you'll notice that the velvet ropes around the dot matrix machine start to fall away. Once you notice that the 2 different ropes are knocked down, you can complete the puzzle same as usual, and after talking to Spader for a short little while, when we walk back through this way, the dot matrix will have left, leaving behind a briefcase that contains Office Party. On the 3rd floor, in the back working room that Dashi gives us access to, where we find the race into a robot body, one of the machines immediately to the left of where the body is will have Mr. Felito. Now at this point you will have 9 of the VHS tapes. Make sure you're going back and watching every single one in the Videoclub Misterio room.
Mr. Filetto.
Mr. Filetto, Mr. Filetto, Mr. Filetto, Mr. Filetto, Mr.
The final tape is actually found in the underwater segment. As you're swimming through the first part of this, if you just stick to the bottom and go all the way down to the bottom right hand corner of all this, there will be a landmine in the way of a briefcase, so make sure you have a pencil handy to stab it. You can actually pick up a pencil on the way to the landmine, so it's not that big of a concern, but in that briefcase is Mom and Dad. At this point in the game, it's actually too late to go and watch this particular tape. Don't worry about that, you don't actually have to watch this one for the achievement. But one more thing you're going to want to make sure that you've done is rescued Sosa. Assuming you rescued Sosa, then at the very end of the game, you can talk to her in the lobby. By the way, I've seen 9 of the Videoclub Misterio tapes, and I also have the last one, but I haven't seen it yet. You found them all on your first day? We're making you a VIP member of the club. Here, I had it reserved for you. You got Videoclub Misterio VIP card. Thank you. If you take a look at it, maybe you'll find the mystery. When accessing the card in our inventory and looking at it, you then get a link to the Videoclub Misterio Yuppie Psycho website, as well as the achievement Be Kind Rewind. Entering this URL actually redirects us to the Videoclub Misterio YouTube channel. Marta Sosa actually has her own YouTube channel. The banner is Videoclub Misterio. It features her actual character art as her profile icon. This channel was created back in 2018 and contains full versions of what we were finding in the game. But this isn't actually the first iteration of Videoclub Misterio. Back in the day, way before Yuppie Psycho, Videoclub Misterio specifically had their own website. although unfortunately it now seems to be defunct. Using the Wayback Machine, we can look at archived versions of this site. There are videos dating back 11 years on YouTube. It features a few of the VHS tapes themselves, as well as lengthier shorts that were clipped down into the videos we see within the game. Sosa claims that the tapes make more sense when seen all together. It's unclear if that means stringing together the 10 tapes found within the game, or viewing the longer versions found throughout Videoclub Misterio and our own YouTube channel. Seems like there might be a lot to dig into there. Francisco Calvolo is credited with the art, script, direction, and sound effects in Yuppie Psycho. He actually has his own Wikipedia page, and if you go to it, it credits him as being one of the founders of Videoclub Misterio. It's very interesting realizing that some of these videos that appear in the game are 11 years old. There's very specific imagery in these videos and in the game, like characters being bandaged up and bloodied. There's specific themes and ideas that have been bouncing around in Francisco's head for 11 years. It's super cool to think he had these very specific story beats in his head all that time, just waiting to get them out there. There were some theories that Marta Sosa is a real person. I don't actually see any evidence to support that, especially considering other instances of people being very specifically thanked. Videoclub Misterio receives a special thanks. There was a group of filmmakers consisting of more than just Francisco, same as Baroque Decay now being a game development team consisting of more than just Videoclub Misterio alumni. I honestly don't know if anyone other than Francisco moved on to make games with him, but seemingly the days of Misterio have passed, but it's very cool that they were able to preserve the legacy in this way. Something particularly interesting that I will tie back together here is that the art gallery paintings are credited in the game's actual credits as being by Shigeru Tanaka, same as they were in the art gallery within the game. I think that also further supports the idea that Marta Sosa isn't a real person. Seemingly all real-world influences on the game were credited properly, or at least thanked at the end. But while I'm on the subject, we're yet again bringing up the blood of the devil with this exhibit. Hopefully I stop jumping around so sporadically throughout this video. I think I'm done with that. When escaping the dot matrix, we run out through the cave. Afterwards, we can actually come back to this area, but do be warned. It is quite easy to block yourself from being able to access this. When you're shifting around the cubicles, there is one particular movement that cannot be undone from the other side, so you have to fix it before your access is blocked after the dot matrix fight. So just quickly, you move this out of the way to get through, and then move it back as you continue on forwards to leave that available to you. Outside the entrance to the cave, it's a circular for all employees, dated April 4th, 1984. Employees are required to use new computers. Syntranet are corrupt, vulnerable to computer worms. We start to see lots of repeating S's, seemingly from corruption or encryption, but starting to feel very reminiscent of the snake. There is also a chest that has the cassette tape. And very specifically, Brian will refuse to go back into the cave. Back at the Video Club audio-visual room, you can look at and use the voice tape, giving you the achievement voice, at which time you see a shadowed figure holding their own head, after which time the camera will begin to pan upwards, showing that Brian is now a little more centered on the screen, giving you a bit of a hint that maybe the configuration of the room has changed. You're now able to walk straight forward through the desk and wall, off into a dark area with a bloody path. You will need the flashlight to see this properly. At the end of the path is a stack of papers housing a pool of blood in which is standing a headless Kate holding her own head. Interacting with this disturbing image produces nothing but pauses from both this vision of Kate and Brian. It also works to foreshadow the events of Hugo's party. At several points we get to hear the legends of three old witch hunters, E. Nazari, R. Corvo, and A. Moita. R. Corvo we find at the bottom of the toxic pool and borrow his card, permanently borrow. We also see Corvo a couple times through different flashbacks, and you can even find his little hideaway. Finding this hideout is simple enough. When you're on the 4th floor, you basically just go to the left, crawl underneath things, keep going to the left, and then you'll find kind of a cleared out little crook with hunters sprawled across the floor. Amoita is referred to repeatedly through the game as AM. There are 3 different altars in the game that you can fix and pray at, and if you pray at all 3 before accessing the coffin in the mausoleum, then AM will present themselves to you, telling you the story of how the Sintra family came into possession of Demori, outlining some very critical pieces of lore. Also, more red eyes. Inazari is never really seen or heard from. When you first find this library mummy, there's a small whisper from the witch.
Nazari,
We can hear them say the name, Nazari, identifying them for us. Possibly even the very same character we see on the portrait accessing that room. Another theory is that Nazari went crazy and became the Forest Goblin, but the Forest Goblin was the boss on the 5th floor before they were driven mad. Different characters around the garden will talk about how the boss used to be controlling, obsessive, and ambitious until recently. Hugo claims that the boss locked themselves away a year ago. The goblin was supposedly driven mad by repeatedly seeing the witch. Hugo, trying to work his way up the ladder, may have repeatedly baited this man into seeing the witch, raising his own rank within the company. A few more seemingly random unconnected things I'd like to rattle off really quickly, most of which are tied to achievements. When repeatedly accessing the Sintranet, in the upper right hand corner you will eventually find Sintra swinging on her set. When she's no longer there and you interact with it yourself, you go for a quick swing and unlock Sweet Child O' Mine. Outside the room where you can find the Videoclub Misterio equipment, there is a door blocked by a vending machine that is banging and rattling around. At multiple times throughout the game, Hugo will be away from his desk. At one of those points, you can rifle through his things and find a can of cat food. Once the cat food is in your possession, go back to the area with the rattling vending machine. This will now be gone, and you can hear what appears to be someone or something crying. As you bravely enter this now open door, you'll see that it's actually just a couple of whining cats. But if you leave them with their delicious little can of food, then they'll leave you alone, allowing you to crawl under the desk and access a secret area. By crawling through this area, we find a lone chest, inside of which is a witch paper as well as a little something extra. Wait a second, there's some old sheets of paper here. After reviewing several non-official studies on the Hexenhammer, I begin to think we are missing the key roles of the familiar spirits. Spider, bat, cat, rat, white wolf, owl, raven, toad, and the most important of all, the snake. Now, there is plenty to speculate on here. We see most of these throughout the game. There's a spider on the wall outside of the archives. We see cats in the room just before this. The owl is found flying around holding the gems, as well as being in the library. We frequently see Hugo running around dressed as a toad. The raven would be the old witch hunter Corvo. And the snake, of course, is the end monster of the game. Just a little bit of extra world building, expanding further on what is known from the Hexenhammer. Upon meeting the very eccentric Forest Goblin, we learn that he can grant special powers after licking barcodes. Who knows what the hell is going on there, but you can give him a cereal box with a barcode on it. This is actually required to advance the story. He'll give you a contract that allows you to breathe toxic gases. This one has to happen. The second barcode you can give him is actually entirely optional. On the second floor, Initiation, where Chapman was sent, there is an initiation test room. You're not allowed to access it if you say that you are Brian Pasternak, because you're already promoted above this level. If you access the room saying that you are Chapman, you can do the test on his behalf. When Chapman asks you to do the initiation test for him, you can counter-offer saying you'll do it for 1,000 credits. If you do not do this, upon completing the initiation test, he runs off to floor 3 and you cannot follow. If you said that you would do it for $1,000, he's actually kind of impressed with your business sense and realizes that you've maybe learned a little bit with your time at the company. In order to complete this initiation test, you have to wait for some of these box-headed creatures to walk horizontally across the circle. Once they do, you sneak up closely behind them and interact, the same button you use to talk to people, and you'll be able to light up a little heart above their head. I believe once you've done 5 of these in the time that you're given, then you will successfully complete the test. The test is over. We announce that a new employee has passed the promotion test. Congratulations, Mr. Chapman, you're now a 3rd floor worker. This time when Chapman receives his promotion, he'll throw the $1,000 on the ground for you on his way out. The other initiates on the floor will swarm it and pick up the credits before you actually get a chance to get it for yourself. Regardless of if you offered to do it for free or if you tried to swindle him out of his 1,000 credits, either way, a carton of cigarettes will be dropped on the ground. Cigarettes, which you can then take to the Forest Goblin to have licked for more special powers. This one costs 3 witch papers and allows you to breathe underwater. Pretty awesome superpower, totally optional, but it does make the end part of the game actually just so much easier. You can get good at the end game with practice anyways, but believe me, this is easier. There are only a couple points in the game when Rustov and Malone's office is actually accessible. If you wander in during one of the right times, you can talk to Jenna Malone, the office flirt. Pasternak, are you a man of flesh or blood? If you answer, I'm a man of flesh, oh, how disappointing. And all the employees laugh. Still, I hope you have some tricks up your sleeve. If instead you answer that you are a man of blood, ooh, I'm waiting to see you turn into one time comes. Me, I'm a man of blood too, Malone. Shut up, stupid. And then with a slight glitch here, during the ... when it shows the drone guy's face, it'll actually say Brian instead of employee like it did before. Throughout the game you can find VHS tapes from Videoclub Misterio. I'm not sure if this is fully intentional, but the fact that you're collecting videotapes actually ties into a rather famous line from Patrick Bateman in American Psycho.
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Maybe these videos were going to be in the game no matter what, and they decided to make it videotapes to have that direct connection. It might just be entirely coincidental. I think it's officially canon that Bateman was a member of Videoclub Misterio. One of the magazines in the canteen has a man standing on top of Sintracorp in a red cape. This very much reflects the ending where Hugo survives, albeit temporarily. When we eventually go up to Hugo's office after he's worked his way up to the top, Kill the Witch has been cleaned off of the monitor. In the corner, you can see janitorial equipment. Through one of the endings, we get a flashback seeing that Hugo started in the company as a janitor himself. It's actually quite likely that when he gained access to this office for himself, he put in a little bit of elbow grease, maybe for the first time ever in this company, and cleaned up the mess himself using his own janitorial skills. If you choose to access the meeting room early, you will find a woman staring at a pile of horse shit. Seemingly random, just a sign of the disarray of this office, we eventually find out that there is a horse, Dada. If you revisit this room at the end of the game, you'll see that things didn't really work out too well for Dumont and Dada. Feel kind of bad for them. Mostly for Dada. Red eyes. During the actual motivational meeting, Colonel Dumont will get the entire room to repeat after him, run a quick little test. Be sure to pay attention. You have to say the right responses in the right order and you'll get a quick achievement for that. There are 2 different places where you can find these little red robotic pieces. We later find out they're pieces of broken Sintrabots. If you give them to Dashi, he will have rewards for you. There are 2 you can get. Giving just one of them to Dashi will give you the achievement. If it's already been the birthday party, it's too late. In our Corvo's little nest there is a box that has one of these within, and the other one is found after crawling between these 2 dividers just beside the people who are socializing. Dashi can be found on the 3rd floor. After returning to him the first of these, he'll reward you with a stronger flashlight, and the second time he'll reward you with the lantern, which will create circular lights around you, but unfortunately they will drain batteries twice as quickly. When you're fighting the dot matrix, when it grabs you, you can immediately pull up your inventory and use an ink cartridge. There aren't that many of these to spare, so I would recommend maybe just taking the damage and eating some noodles or something, but there is an achievement for this ink thirst, so maybe do it just once. It'll spare you the damage and the dot matrix will chuck you across the room. Make sure you're collecting cardboard boxes whenever you're finding them. There are at least 4 different boxes you can find. In the library, near the blood spider, you can buy one off of Mappy on floor 5 once they've appeared. There's one on the far right middle side of the dot matrix area, and after the party on your main office floor 5 near the altar. When you have 3, you can pile them up in office E and create a shortcut for yourself. There is actually an achievement for saving all of your friends. This can be done either with the dagger or the plastic knife, so you don't have to worry about specifically acquiring the dagger to do this one, but it is possible to block yourself from 2 critical access points if you don't do this before the party. Make sure when you're up by the forest goblin, you unscrew that vent, and make sure you're completing the shortcut achievement, stacking the boxes in Office E. With the arrival of the witch at the party, everyone has these horrific injuries. You'll see things like Sosa bleeding out of her eyes, Dashi bleeding out of his ears. Make note of who was injured in which way. You're also going to want to make sure that you make a mental note of everyone's first names when they discuss them at the party. As you're running through this level, they're going to start getting bound up, captured like the witch's children. After escaping the party, throughout the rest of the game, you'll hear these just awful, disturbing moaning sounds, and that'll indicate that you're near one of these bound up friends. For example, on floor 2, you can go back inside the initiation room. This time the box-headed people won't actually hurt you. When you cut this person loose, you can see that there's blood splattered all over their body with no discernible injury. This is the same way that Chapman was injured. Tony Chapman. On floor 5, Office D, at the end of the hallway, where you initially get chased off by the weird crawling filing cabinet creature, you'll see someone with blood all around their mouths. This is Irina Rostov. Again on floor 5, in your office, you can access the corrupted Corvo Sintranet using that metallic card. Relatively near the center of all this, we'll find someone bound up with bleeding ears. This is Ine Dashi. This next one is where we need to make sure we had unscrewed the vent next to the goblin. We need to go up to floor 8, but we no longer have the elevator. We have to take the shortcut. This will put us out right next to the forest goblin, going down south near the river. We find one of these bound up people with a massive gash in their face. This is Jenna Malone. There's one more on floor 7. This is the one we specifically need that shortcut for. Let's make sure we have all those boxes so we can climb up into the vent of Office E. This puts us out near the Videoclub Misterio hangout. Here we find a bound up creature with bleeding eyes. This is Marta Sosa. Which, something interesting I want to throw out there. There's a possibility that Marta looks as frazzled and deranged as she does, either because of her fear of the witch or because she's seen the witch several times before. We know that the forest goblin saw the witch 8 times and gouged out their own eyes. It's possible this was Marta's last time seeing the witch before she too gouged out her eyes. Seemingly at first, there's no way to save Kate, nowhere to be found, but she's actually hidden in one of the latest sections of the game during the very difficult underwater sequence, where you're gonna wish so badly that you took the time to get the breathing underwater ability. You can find notes hidden all around. It takes quite a bit of trial and error. They are pretty well in the same place every time, and the code is always 2468. So when you go into the elevator, where you actually find a devil version of yourself, which is extra strange, even more weird devil nonsense, you enter bell, bell, bell 2468, and it takes you to a special area where the witch seemingly is. But if you use the dagger or the knife on the witch, same as you have before, it is freed and revealed to be Kate. With them all saved, you can talk to them on your way out of the office, have a nice bit of closure, some character arcs. It's also the only way you can get one particular ending, which at this point it's probably as good a time as any to talk about the different endings in this game. There are actually 4 different endings you can achieve in this game, all of which I highlighted during my own playthrough of the game, but that's kind of bogged down with me exploring things for the first time, figuring it out, and playing around with things, so allow me to trim that down and give you the quickest version of those 4 endings. The absolute easiest ending to get is when you first enter the main office and are offered the Kill the Witch contract. You simply turn it down. Should I sign the contract? No. I have a bad feeling about this. I better not sign it. On the other hand, having my first job at an important company with all these credits, phew. The game leaves it a little bit open for you. You're not fully committed at that point. You can still go back and say yes if you change your mind afterwards. That way you can't, accidentally abort a new attempt at a game. But instead, if you choose to walk out and go to the elevator, hello, it's me again. Look, I've given it some thought and I've decided I'm not interested in the job. I don't know if I can go. The building really isn't doing you any favors. It doesn't really help you. It doesn't really give you any direction. You just take it back down to 0 and walk out. Should I leave without taking the job? Yes. You get the ending? I'm better off at home. I think this job just isn't for me. Brian leaves the job without really knowing the horrors that he avoided. Seemingly, he doesn't really get to help anyone. As the credits roll, we see that red offer letter. After the end credits roll, Brian Pasternak's job offer bursts into pieces. The next most simple ending is to actually leave the company when Hugo fires you. Hugo has earned his place at the top of the company. He reveals that he started as a Class R and has worked his way all the way up to the top. Hugo has his position of power, he tells you off, lets you know that he basically doesn't need you anymore, and fires you. Hugo has kind of worked in the back pocket of the witch all this time, diverting other characters into the maw of the snake, himself dressing up as a toad, an animal which is frequently prey to snakes. Hugo knows he's on the chopping block, that no one is safe from the snake themselves. But if he uses his position of power to continually divert others in the way, he's protecting himself and his own position. Brian threatens that. Brian is not on Hugo's side, and he's here to destroy the witch. It's easier for Hugo if he just leaves and he never has to worry about Brian again. Despite our differences, I agree with you, Brian. Central Corp shouldn't hire random people to take on the witch, and I'm committed to ending it. The least I can do for you is give you a letter of dismissal and let you go home. Isn't that what you wanted? To escape this nightmare? Yeah, of course. Take this. You get a dismissal letter. Just go to the lobby and go out the door, the same way you came in this morning. If you talk to him again, what are you still doing here, Brian? It's over. You can go home now. Despite everything you've seen, the risk to everyone you've gotten to know over the day, friendly characters like Kate and Dashi are at risk. Even the hateful ones like Chapman probably don't deserve to die. Up until this point, the building itself has been holding us within the company. It gets into your brain, under your skin, and you're unable to leave. Once you have that dismissal paper in hand, I feel like I'm no longer tied to the company. I can finally go back to my proper place, safe and sound. I don't know what happened to my workmates, and I couldn't say goodbye to Sintra. But who cares, right? I never should have come to this hell in the first place. Should I leave the company? And if you say yes, you get ending fired. Brian takes the bus home and falls asleep after a long day. The final shot of this ending is Ray's bells, slowly turning into a snake. In the first full, proper ending of the game, we do learn that Ray and Demori had switched bodies at the behest of the snake. One of the 2 rules was that Demori had to be kept within a magic seal. Seemingly, the snake was deceiving Demori, playing on their friendship, using Ray's body as a means of escaping the magic seal. Maybe Demori was innocent in this. The 2 sisters seem to love each other even if they were fighting at the time. The intention might have been to switch bodies back. In Demori's mind, this might have been a temporary option. But once the bodies were switched, Demori within Ray's body was stashed away, causing the family to burn Ray within Demori's body, effectively destroying their family and the company. Ray's body housing Demori's mind is freed, and we're able to fully repair the original Sintrabot. This isn't precisely the same as having Ray back, but through the experiments we learned about earlier, this is a version of Ray's mind from approximately that time. At the end of this, after coming face to face with the snake themselves and defeating it, we again go upstairs to confront Hugo. I'll let this scene play out so you can see the differences between this and the next ending. Pasternak, are you still here? I've been thinking about what you told me, and I think I know what's wrong with you. What's wrong with me? What are you talking about? You're a coward, Hugo. Oh really? Me? Then what are you, then? I'm not. I have no problem admitting that something scares me or that I can't do it. I'm not hiding behind a mask. I trust others, and they help me achieve everything that seems impossible. Whatever you say, Brian, you have the power of friendship. But what have you got out of it? I'm the king of the world. What about you? I've dealt with the witch. Congratulations! Then I terminate your contract and you'll get the 20,000 credit bonus immediately. Wait. First, I want you to meet a friend of mine. Hello, Hugo. I've been looking forward to meeting you. This is Ray Sintra, the heiress of the family. According to the company's bylaws, she has the right to be the CEO of Sintra Corp. What are you talking about? That's impossible. You're not going to get in my way, Brian. That girl disappeared a long time ago. If this is really her, she'd be a lot older. How do you intend to prove it? Well... Hey you, get down from there. Did you see that? The company recognizes me. It's all mine now, Mr. Frog. This is some kind of spell. I'm sorry, Hugo, but it's true. Wait, we can make a deal. What are you talking about? What kind of deal? Well, we could. There's no deal. There's no deal. Fired, croak, 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 fired. Hugo is now visibly breaking a sweat. She's the witch. Now pulling out the Athume dagger. A dagger! She's the witch! It's pretty gruesome, but kind of satisfying. I'm not the witch, stupid. But my sister sure is. Demori and Ray have once again switched bodies, with the duplicated Ray's mind now existing in her own body, and Demori existing in the Sintrabot. You'll even notice a little witch's snake wrapped around her neck. This scene plays out more or less the same depending on who you saved. So instead, let's quickly look at the alternate ending, one final, quote, good ending, and then we can talk about the variances in the post endings. Things start to branch out a bit right at the end of the game here, so there's a lot to see and cover. The next possible alternative here is when you first go to Hugo's office. He's racing around dressed up as Super Toad. There's a remote control on the desk that's been there since the beginning of the game. If you haven't already, you can now put batteries inside of the remote. Using the remote turns the red monitor on, temporarily distracting Hugo. Once his little routine has been interrupted, he'll go to the desk, place the dagger, and do a spin in his chair. Once the dagger is on the table, you can sprint out when it's safe to do so and grab it off of his desk. But be sure to hide again immediately. Once Hugo realizes it's gone, he'll wig out and start running patrol all over the room. You now have to be even more cautious sneaking out of here. But if you manage to get away with the dagger, when you go to advance the game with the now rebuilt Sintra, which is Ray's mind inside of a robot body, Brian will openly admit that he found the dagger, stealing it off of Hugo. Ray takes the dagger. It's dangerous. I'm not letting you near my sister with this. She then breaks the dagger into many pieces, progressing through the underwater section of the game, battling past the snake. None of that really changes. It's this end scene when we're back in the office with Hugo that changes. Immediately when we walk in, Hugo will now accuse you. What are you doing here? I want to know why you've been harassing me all this time. Stop this nonsense. You stole my dagger, no? Confess to it. Give it back. Come on. Put a price on it if that's what you want. I'll pay you anything. I can upgrade your whole family's class, too. Anything, Pasternak. But you have to give me back that dagger. We now know that not only was Hugo using other employees as a way of deflecting against himself, he was using the dagger as personal insurance that the witch wouldn't come for him directly. I apologize for everything I've done to you, okay? I'll get down on my knees if you like. Don't you realize that I'm the boss now? The witch will have me in her crosshairs without that dagger. Please, Brian. No. I can't give it back to you. I don't have it anymore. But you can relax because I've done my job. I've dealt with the witch. What? Congratulations! And again, he terminates the contract. This plays out pretty well the same. Ray and Demore will stroll in, same as before. Hugo openly accuses her of being the witch this time, rather than keeping it quiet and to himself. Ray immediately offers up that Demore in Sintra's body is in fact the witch. Hugo no longer has the dagger and goes into a frenzy. This is all your fault, Brian. Hugo, you fucked everything up. All of it. Running forward and slapping Brian in the face. It might be a punch, but Hugo's kind of a small guy and it doesn't seem like that big of a hit. I think it might be a bit of a slap. Ray actually just laughs at this. I don't know what's up with this little girl. I don't know if a million years on ice or whatever kind of warped her brain, but she's kind of a little bit worrying with all of her maniacal laughter. We then see Hugo walking out of the building. We then also take our letter of dismissal and leave the company. Now, if we consider that scene the ending, we can now talk about the two different post endings. Alright, this one isn't really a post ending though. It certainly isn't an ending. I guess it's a pre-ending? I'm making up these naming conventions as I go. I have no idea. All I know is that there is an achievement attached to this one. Before going up to talk to Hugo, before the snake fight, all that good stuff, there's the water level. Which again, just so much easier if you have the breathing underwater ability. There are these little snakes swimming around in the water that if they capture you, will take away one of your senses, making the level even harder. They'll also position themselves near things that you can interact with on this level and duplicate themselves to look like that item. So keep a close eye out for doubles and triples of things throughout this level. It could be a snake lying in wait. If in the process you were unable to find the 4 sheets in time, you will be bitten by the snakes 5 separate times, losing all of your senses, and you yourself going into a world full of cocooned mummy beings. It might seem like the game is actually over here, but instead, if you crawl up towards the top of the screen where things get slowly brighter, you'll see what appears to be a ghost of Ray Sintra. You're then actually saved by Ray in the Sintra body, allowing the end part of the game to play out normally. But there is still one more proper ending that you can achieve at the end of the game here, after which time I'll talk about the little post endings. Freeing everyone, including Kate, is its own achievement, so you might as well do that and be a good guy, or you can specifically just free Kate for this ending. At the end of the game, after you've won, leaving the company, you can choose to talk to each of them independently as you leave, resolving certain story arcs like Chapman learning his lesson, but also Kate choosing to stay at the company, and opening up the possibility for you to also choose to stay. You can get that cup of coffee you've always wanted, go up to the rooftop, and get to know each other better in peace, knowing that the company is in better hands. Presumably. That girl did an awful lot of maniacal laughing. I was about to take the first train to the suburbs. I don't know if I'll have time. Oh, you're quitting your job? Yeah, I have the dismissal letter right here. It's hard to explain, but let's just say I wasn't cut out for this job. It was all a mistake. Are you gonna stay? I know it sounds crazy with everything that's happened, but I think it's best for me. I've learned a lot today, and I'm sure that tomorrow everything will be easier. That every day that passes will get better. It's gonna be tough, I'm sure, but I guess that's what this is all about, isn't it? And with that, Kate will walk up towards the staircase. I'm sorry you have to leave, Brian. Come and visit us soon. Remember, we're friends now. And if you chase after her like the couple of lovebirds or friend birds that you are, then you achieve a nice, friendly, heartwarming ending where you guys get to enjoy your lives at this batshit crazy company. Now I can finally quickly fire off the 2 post endings, as I'm calling them, because there's that little diversion before the end credits here, where you can either choose to go with Kate or not, even though this does carry on from the same completion conditions of having the dagger or not. These do play out after the credits, but I've probably done enough to explain why I'm calling them post-endings. Let's just talk about it. I feel like the signs that I've been making this video for too long are starting to show. So first up is Cleaning Boy, where we learn Hugo's true identity, found when you don't take the dagger. Hey, this bathroom smells like ass, doesn't it? I think I know what's causing it. Look at this. Hey you, scum! Yeah, you. Let's see you wash up and change your clothes once in a while. You stink. Hugo tries to put on a smile, but as he's cleaning up these dead bodies, he starts rummaging around through their things, finding a few credits, and then finding someone who kind of starts to look a little bit like himself, Mr. Hugo. And with that, the Class R citizen janitor at Cintracorp is able to immediately promote himself and start gunning for the top position at the company. And with that, the final thing that I want to talk about in this video is our other possible post-ending, one that gives us even more information about the man that we call Hugo. And with this, I think there's also enough information in this video for you to easily get every achievement. So hopefully this is useful for witch hunters and achievement hunters alike. That was me giving myself a high five for that incredible joke. It opens up with Hugo curled up next to Corvo in his lair. Hey, Tadpole. My work at the company is almost done. I have everything I need to kill her. What? Come on, drink with me. It's been a rough ride up here. But you're leaving already? You promised me that if I helped you, you'd return the favor. Don't get mad, Tadpole. I can still help you. Now, remind me what you wanted? I want to have power. You want what? I want to be above everyone, to get to the top. I want to have magical powers and be able to fly free. Fly? What are you talking about? Just like you then. I want to be like you. You said you could grant me any wish under your voodoo magic, right? Yeah, I know, man, but you can't leave until you keep your promise. Take this. It's my magic cloak. I'm giving it to you. Magic? Yeah, sure. It'll help you get your wish. But it works slowly. It can take years. And, well, you have to do your part, too. And if you want to fly, you're gonna have to start jumping first. You're a liar and a drunk. I don't want your dirty rag. He throws it on the ground and stomps off in a fit. Hey, come back here. And it immediately cuts to Hugo plummeting off the top of Cintracorp for what seems to be much longer than 10 stories, but let's not focus on that. Obviously, Tadpole Hugo went back and did retrieve the cloak. He took the advice of jumping before he flew. But there's also the possibility that this is when Hugo started putting others in the way of the witch. He may have felt betrayed and had Corvo killed. But it paints this very sad picture that Corvo may have unwittingly created this monster. Pretty dramatic, crazy final note to leave on, eh? What's that thing YouTube is always saying? Try and hit a minimum of 1 hour videos? That sounds right. Now, this video isn't 100% complete. This was originally made back when the game was quite new. In that time, they've had a few small updates that added a couple of secrets, a new Videoclub Misterio tape, nothing too major. But then they added the full DLC with 2 hours of playable content, new endings, pieces of lore. This video is already so big. I would love to separate out that content, address it separately, and tie it back into the larger game. So instead, I'm uploading this revised version without the Executive Edition add-ons. That'll come later. How soon is based on, viewer interest. I would be very excited to dig back into this game. It's honestly one of my favorites I've ever played on the Let's Play channel. One last time, I want to remind you to wishlist Dead Estate. There's links in the description and a pinned comment. You won't regret it. It's going to be so great. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to patrons of the channel. We have their names off to the right here, and I hope to see you all again soon.